Srećna slava domaćine, happy Saints Day, dear friends. Congratulations to all of you whose hearts are green-colored and who are ready to celebrate St. Patrick's Week, better known here in Serbia as Slava AC Celtica I Ortodoks Kielca. A great, long-lasting friendship between the Serbs and the Irish will be abundantly soaked with beer, of course. We're drinking beer, we're drinking gin, no matter what's in bottle, we're drinking everything. But first, and more importantly, from the 8th till 18th of March, the 12th Belgrade Irish Festival is taking place in several cultural venues around Belgrade. So basically, it's one round of culture, 2 rounds of beer. Fair enough. Among the many wonderful guests of this festival, we have to distinguish one name and one shiny movie career, the great Irish director Džim Šeridan. He directed some of the true masterpieces like My Left Foot, In the Name of the Father, to name just a few. It's enough to say that his films have received the nominations for 16 Academy Awards, 14 Golden Globes, and that one name is undeniably connected with Mr. Sheridan's career, the name of the magnificent actor Daniel Day-Lewis. Ladies and gentlemen, with huge apologies for my Tarzan English, I'm much better in Russian, as you already know. I'm proud to introduce our guest tonight, Mr. Džim Šeridan. Hello, Mr. Šeridan.
How are you?
It's great to have you here. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Have you ever been in Belgrade before? And do you know about this long-lasting feeling of sympathy for Irish people in Serbia?
Not really. I was in Palic.
Palic Lake, yes?
Yeah, and I got treated very well up there. I was doing a course of, teaching kids. But yeah, I can feel the love for the Irish in the room. I don't exactly know why you love us, other than we have a history
Is it hard to love you?
No, we're a very lovable kind of people. I think everybody feels free with the Irish, It's like we opposed kind of colonialism for a long, long time, and I think that's why people really like the Irish, Not that we didn't do things ourselves that were wrong or whatever, but...
Who didn't?
Yeah, who didn't is exactly right, yeah.
So if we try to explain where it comes from, this Serbo-Irish connection and affection, the first answer could be we've never been in war against each other, which is great. And it's almost impossible, but great. What do you think is the secret of our love?
Well, I just think that when the Irish went over to Europe, they were so good at mingling with everybody. And the Europeans love us, and we became part of the European Union. And England always wanted to be an island. And like Brexit tells you that they're much more nationalist than we are. We're more internationalist. Like when I was up in Palic, I was a bit disturbed that, there was no access to kind of modern film-making stuff. A lot of the people were still using old projectors and whatever. I don't know enough about the war or any of that stuff to comment on it. And all I know about here, film-wise, is Costa Rica's films, which I adore, I think, like you're talking about 16 Academy Award nominations, but Time of the Gypsies could have got 16 awards on its own. It's such a brilliant movie. It's off the scale of being good,
And beautiful music in that film. I say this because I know that you know very much about good music in your films, but we'll come to that later. I was preparing for this interview in the most wonderful way, I have to admit. After many years, I rewatched 2 of your movies, My Left Foot and In the Name of the Father. So basically, while my wife was bathing the kids and arguing with them, it's time to sleep. No, Mom, it's not. It's only midnight. I was like, sorry, dear, I'm working here with the beer and popcorn and Daniel Day-Lewis. Hard work. So, by the way, have you seen Mr. Lewis lately?
Yeah, I saw him about a month ago. I keep in regular contact with him. He's probably the most private person you've ever met,
He's not acting anymore. That is his decision.
He's not acting anymore, no. Yeah, it's his decision, but I think he has the right to come back if he wants to, I think because he announced his retirement, people are obsessed with will he act? And I think he only announced his retirement so that people would leave him alone.
What is he up to now while not acting?
Well, you know, he lives in New York with his family, and I know he kind of is very involved in his children's life and careers, and that's mostly what he does, being a good father.
The most important work.
Yeah.
We've heard stories about Daniel Day-Lewis's incredible commitment while preparing for the role of Christy Brown in My Left Foot. Is it true that he was in the role of a disabled person not only when you called action, but during the entire process of filming?
Yeah. I mean, look, that to people who don't know the business, that sounds like an affectation because they think acting is like performance. But acting is actually about communication and poetry, and it's deeper than mere performance. It's kind of like respecting the person you're playing. And, you know, I knew Daniel was right in staying in the wheelchair because we would have to carry him upstairs and over the cables on the set. And he was demonstrating in a real way what it's like for somebody in a wheelchair.
Yes.
Way before there was wheelchair access, like way before.
Yes.
So his poetic soul was just like, if I'm going to do this person, I have to pay a lot of attention to the problems they have.
Yes.
So he painted for 8 hours one day with his left foot.
Really? Yes.
Yeah. And, you know, when we went to the children who had cerebral palsy, you know, we were casting a few of them in the movie. Like, what was he going to do? Get out of character and sit up out of the wheelchair and walk away? No. And they, I think, actually believed he had cerebral palsy, but whether they did or not is not, it's his respect for the condition and the person who has it. And nowadays, you wouldn't be able to get an actor couldn't play that role today. Mm-hmm. But now we have the movie helped advance the cause of the disabled. So now the disabled are able to play themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's a great development. So that role, I think, is going to be unique for all time. It's probably the last time you're going to see a able-bodied actor in a role like that.
So when I asked myself, what are some points in My Left Foot which are close, recognizable, familiar with our Serbian nation and mentality, I wrote down these 3 words. Porodica, family. Upornost, persistence. And smisao za humor, sense of humor. Are these words important to you?
Yeah, like, family is vital insofar as, I'll give you 2 examples. My mother was very Republican, you know, she was very, but she was always for the underdog. So when the war, or when the Troubles War, whatever you want to call it, erupted in the north of Ireland, our house was full of refugees. And then we had lodgers. And do you know what lodgers are?
No.
Lodgers are people who pay for their bed and breakfast.
Okay.
And stay in the house. But my mother used to give them bed, breakfast, dinner, pay for their schooling. She was crazy. And I got to know everybody in the world from about the age of 12 to 15 because the lodgers were all type of people.
Yes.
But it was weird because the family was no longer like a nuclear family. It was an extended family. And my movies, when I judge myself, are kind of obsessed with putting the family back. And so the family is of vital importance to me. And this may not seem important, but I'll give you an example. In American culture, the family isn't as important as the individual. And that may sound a strange statement, but when you see Trump going up the plane and he has an umbrella because it's raining,
okay,
and his wife is following him with no umbrella, and the son, well, that tells you that individualism is more, and everybody who sees that still votes for him. So America was populated by 2 waves. One was Catholics from the south of Europe, and the other, predating that, was Protestants from the north of Europe. So America actually has a fracture, I believe, on a religious basis. And that's all, it's belief systems that are in conflict, not people. So anyway, you have a war, it's 2 belief systems in conflict.
And there is maybe one more connection between Serbia and My Left Foot. From time to time, it seems like our government is also doing everything with its left foot. You don't have to know anything about it, but they don't do it as good as Christy Brown did. Yeah. In the Name of the Father, what a movie. What a story, and I have to say now, what a perfect soundtrack.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't watched it, ako niste gledali ljudi, dakle, od početka filma, from the opening scene, riots, police, tanks, fighting on the streets of Belfast, and Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child, till the end of the movie with the voice of Sinead O'Connor, you made me the thief of your heart. Thank you, Mr. Sheridan, for that.
Yeah,
and thank you for that experience.
Yeah.
Connections again, Serbia and the movie. Nationalism, senseless brutality, hatred, injustice, and innocent victims.
Yeah.
Of course. We are pretty familiar with that in this region. Yeah. So is it still a fact that no one suffered any consequences for imprisoning innocent people, the so-called Guildford Four and the others?
I don't think anybody
After
did.
so many years, yes. Decades.
But you gotta, this is a very important point you're raising, right? I knew the policeman who was responsible for forcing the confessions.
Yes.
And all the journalists were a bit mad at me because they'd pursued him and they wanted him to be punished, right? And I was like, no, you're looking for a scapegoat. And I'm looking for the people higher up the ladder who allowed this to happen. The policeman is only doing his job on the ground. Most police in most countries are trying to do the job on the ground. Sometimes they do it right, sometimes they do it wrong. But the problem is, it's much, if you are facing an armed rebellion and you're, let's say you call it terrorism or you call it freedom fighters or whatever, it doesn't matter what you call it. If you're facing that, it's much, and you're in England, it's much safer, it's much more effective to put innocent people in prison than guilty ones. Because once the innocent people are put in prison, the rest of the population are like, keep their head down.
Yes.
But nationalism is, for me, nationalism is both a blessing and a curse, you know? It's got two sides to it, you know? When it's in service of some great ideal, it's very good. If it's opposing colonialism, I'm for nationalism. But if it's like, for instance, on the north of Ireland, we're trying to convince 1 million Protestants that they're essentially not to give up their British identity, but to join the Irish one. And at the same time, there are English people who we don't want to be Irish. But the only way we could get a unified country, in my view, is to understand the Unionists and the Protestants, to kind of have dialogue. What I found disturbing about Serbia when I was in Palic was that there didn't seem to be any dialogue. And I don't mean within Serbia. I feel that the outside world doesn't connect with Serbia. And even you have, like, I don't know, I'm not getting involved in politics because I don't know enough, but you have a great, great athlete like Djokovic, and like, you know, it's kind of hard to understand why he might be disliked, you know, because like he is probably the best, but there is obviously an issue going on that I'm not aware of.
Mr. Gary Conlon, real Gary Conlon, was your friend.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he passed away 10 years ago. How did he feel about this unbelievable injustice he suffered? He was imprisoned as an IRA terrorist bomber, although he was absolutely innocent and spent 15 years in prison. How did he continue his life after that? Was there bitterness? Was there need to revenge in him?
You know, he was funny as hell. He was like one of the funniest guys you ever met. But yeah, deep down there was a huge bitterness that took him another 15 years to get over. He was adorable. He was so for helping other people who are wrongly imprisoned, you know? And my kind of passion is people who are wrongly accused. And Jerry initially went, look, you can't make a movie about a person without them feeling edgy about it. Like, because you have to import a bit of yourself into the movie. to make it real, to make it feel.
Yes.
And it's not always just about the person who it's about, because a character in the movie can never be the actual person. So he was a bit edgy for a while, and then he came back and he got to love me and I got to love him. And I would meet him, and then he died. And, you know, he carried to his grave a great burden of believing that it was his fault that his father was imprisoned. The most important thing in that film is the non-violent father. And the most important consequence of that is that any oppressive structure, whether it's colonial, national, whatever it is, the basic way of subjugating a society in the past, maybe not in the future, but in the past, was to separate the authority of the father from the son. Mm-hmm. Like the prayer says, in the name of the Father, the Son. Well, once you break that link, you've broken the society. And when you break the society, the sons hate the father. So my thing was to put the love of the father back into Irish society. That's the aim.
Thank you for this wonderful answer. Last question. In your movies, we see that you care for the common man. Mm-hmm. You tell true stories of injustice, of struggle, of passion, and there is always celebration of life and family. We said it before. There is a lot of injustice everywhere, in Ireland, in Serbia, of course, everywhere. How should we celebrate the life while the injustice is getting bigger and fatter and uglier? Another glass of beer, or what should we do?
It's difficult because, okay, so I would come to Serbia just because if somebody said Serbia, problem, you know, there's an issue, well, I'll come to see what the issue is, because I think communication is the most important thing. What you do on that screen, that's the most important. That's the new religious pulpit. When I was a kid, this was my home. My father's putting up a television aerial, and the church was here. And the church was actually blocking the signal.
Yeah, really?
To our home.
Yes.
And when Irish television came in, this pulpit replaced this. And within 20, 30 years, there was no church. So communication through the TV is ultra important. And right now, it's mostly, like you can have Al Jazeera or whatever, but it's mostly coming from one direction, all the information. And that's very dangerous.
I'll remember this. Mr. Sheridan, for the end of this interview, what shall we drink to?
We'll drink to the health of Serbia, as far as I'm concerned right now, because I'm here. God bless you.
Thank you. And I can say, let's drink to Dublin.
Okay.
To Dublin. Why? Because Christy Brown was born there. You forgot the end of your movie. That's the last line.
Yeah.
And of course, drink to Belgrade, because Belgrade Irish Festival was born here. Thank you, sir. It was a real pleasure to meet you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Džim Šeridan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
God bless.
Let's drink to Dublin.
To Dublin?
Yeah.
Why?
Because Christy Brown was born there.
No!